we are ready for the session with Mr. Swain. Let me very briefly introduce him. Mr. Swain, I should mention, was appointed Secretary to the Government of India just a month ago. So congratulations to begin with. He's Secretary, Department of Fisheries. He is still Chairman and Managing Director of SECI, and that's why we are very happy to have him here. It's a privilege to have him here. He has been spearheading the solar sector development for the last few years, first as Joint Secretary, then as Additional Secretary, and of course, always with SECI as well. He was a part of Tamil Nadu IAS cadre, or still is, I should say, and has worked in, as you can imagine, different areas, revenue administration, as they all do. Also, food. He was also in Department of Food and Corporation, also Public and General Administration, etc., etc. He has a master's degree from Delhi School of Economics, also where Dolly went to, got her master's degree as well, and also has a master's degree in international development from GRIPS, Japan. This will be a question and answer session. Mr. Swain has a busy day, and we thought we will just make it Q&A in order to just make sure that his time is most efficiently used. Mr. Swain, we will swap questions. I'll ask one, and then Dolly will ask the second one. My first question, what has been the impact of COVID crisis on overall solar project development from where you stand?
Yeah, most of I generally try to answer the questions very directly. So most of the solar projects have been stalled, but this month we have seen a commissioning of 100 megawatt solar plant. So per se, the existing projects, the projects which are in pipeline, they are getting extended. The projects which are being implemented, there have been issues wherever on site there have been infections, so what had to be stopped. So I would say about the second wave will add to another 3-4 months delay in the project. That's on an average, but there are some areas where it may come in time, some are coming before time also.
Yes. Okay. So would you say that it would be about 12 months to 16 months overall, first wave and second wave including delay?
Not so much. First wave we have given an extension of 5 months, but still I think some were planning to come before time. I would say about 8 months. The more worrying is not the COVID affecting the transmission corridor implementation. That's the major issue, and you may ask later on. The Great Indian Bustard issue also is probably a bigger dampener in the solar project implementation in most of our projects. Possible.
Yes, yeah. Mr. Swain, related to the crisis only, if you can share the experience, that what were the key issues that developers faced and how did SECI address them?
We are very liberal in giving extensions, that is within our powers. We have been also interacting with state governments where issues are coming, specific issues like allowing people, mobilizing materials, that we are helping. Otherwise, that's basically most of the developers want time. Nobody has said that because of this force majeure I want to get out, so that's fine.
Okay. Mr. Swain, how are the issues related to supply chain being addressed by the government? To the extent government has a role in it.
Supply chain has been affected. They say that the module prices have gone up, and because most of the modules do come from China. We have not really done much on this. I think each developer is trying to find out his own way, because there was a neighboring country clause as far as imports from China was concerned. I think in many cases this has been medical listing, it has been relaxed. We have to wait and see. So it's a difficult process. We have not been, I think ministry people will be there, but I am not aware of ministry doing much on that issue. But giving comforts and giving assurance to the developers that PPA will not be reneged upon, those things we are working on.
Okay. Mr. Swain, the next question to you is based on the tenders that have been issued by SECI in the past 1 year, what is the current solar project pipeline? What does it look like? And is it enough to meet the target set by MNRE?
See, our 21-22, our target is to do about 10,000 megawatts of solar, about 4,800 to 5,000 megawatts of wind, and about 6,000 megawatts of hybrid, where about 4,000 will be solar. So that's our plans. Because there has been a renewed interest in wind, so we have stepped up a little bit. So overall, if you see about 7,000 megawatts of wind and 13,000 megawatts of solar, if we take component wise, don't take hybrid as a separate category. This is our plans. Then some of the states are initiating their own tenders, like Gujarat. Maharashtra has come up with big plans to set up. Andhra has already done a big tender. Maharashtra is doing a decentralized solar, the agriculture feeder solarization scheme. I think they want to come out with about 2,000 to 2,500 megawatts in 2 to 3 tranches. So I think there may be, because of the projects getting delayed, there will be some delay, some slip in the achievement of 100 gigawatt by 2022 end. But I think most of the tendering and award will be complete by that time. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Swain, which are the emerging technologies, as in energy storage, hybrids, green hydrogen, will assume center stage in the next few years in India? And does SECI have, what are SECI's plans in this space? Energy storage, hybrids, green hybrids.
There are 2-3 things going on at the same time. One is the government has set up a committee to look into the RPO beyond 2022. So we have been part of it. I think the deliberations are going on how to. There have been talks of also putting the storage obligation instead of having the plain solar or wind obligation. Then the national economic electricity policy, that is also going under a revision. So that the initial stakeholders consultation is over. I think the committee has been asked to quickly submit the plan. NEP also gives a lot of emphasis, whatever the draft that has been prepared internally, because I am part of the committee, there's a lot of emphasis on renewables and energy storage. So policy-wise, government is very much committed. Then there is another committee on development of pump storage. That's also going on. I think we will see some movement and traction on that shortly. So, as I said, about 30% of the projects, like in SECI also, we have planned about 6,000 megawatts of hybrid projects within a total portfolio of 20 gigawatts. So that's about 30 to 40% will come as a hybrid along with storage. Initially, the battery storage will come in small portions, mostly as an energy shift. But there have been talks to bring out storage as a key element of transmission and the grid. So that we have to see, because that will come after the national electricity policy is adopted by the government.
Okay. Mr. Swain, you just mentioned, there's a lot of focus on, there's a growing, you can say growing importance to wind, or growing interest in the wind power space. And we've seen a lot of hybrid tenders, round the clock tenders of late by SECI. So does that mean that the plain vanilla, only the solar standalone or wind standalone tenders are going to subside, and we're going to see more of hybrids and RTCs coming up in future?
No, not necessarily. See, it depends upon the buyer's preference. Some buyers want to take solar, want to take wind, and then in their portfolio they want to adjust. Some buyer will like, mujhe ready-made mil jaye. I don't want to adjust the mix, and I don't want to plan that way. So I want to power this much, and this particular time, let the developer give. So it depends upon that. Some people have a particular liking for hybrid. Some people say, I don't want hybrids. I don't understand them. I want a plain solar, plain wind. Some discoms have a very specific kind of a requirement. Like, for example, Punjab. Punjab requires a significant amount of power in the first 5 months. That is from June to September, October, when that paddy season is on. And they don't require power after that. So they are very comfortable with wind. because in India, wind comes around that time, and after that, it doesn't come. He said, no matter small amount I will observe in the day. So they are very particular about the wind. They are not even so particular about the hybrid. So it depends. So I would say currently about 30% we will do. And depending on sophistication of discoms, if discoms have become fairly sophisticated in handling different varieties of power and mixing, because they are the aggregators of power, or traders like us, we have not so far evolved. At some point of time, we will take different power, we will mix and give it to the discom. So there will be a market for plain solar and plain wind.
Okay.
Of
And
course,
what is
important. Yeah, and even storage also, what we are planning is standalone storage. Intermediaries like us or the discoms, they can take this power, store it, and then use it. Instead of somebody giving the solar along with storage. For optics wise, it looks as if the solar cum storage power is less. But actually, solar is low, storage is high, the average is less. So the buyers understand that. So it can be a mix of both the strategies.
Okay. Alok, I just have an extension of that question before you ask yours. Related to the hybrid and the RTC tenders that were issued and the projects that are being set up under these tenders, what has been the feedback of the developers since this is a new kind of a setup that came into the market? What were the challenges that they brought up?
The plain hybrid, there are no issue in marketing because the rates were quite reasonable. We had three tranches of plain hybrids. So 1200, 1200, 1200, about 3600 we have done. Initially, the response to hybrid was low because it was the same area. So from trans 3 onwards, we have permitted that the wind can be in a different way, the solar in a different place, and they can put a virtual hybrid power plant. So that has shown a very good response. From the buyer side, plain hybrid marketing is not so far is not a problem. Initially, there are some issues like how do you account for the RPO, how much is the solar RPO, how much is the wind RPO. From regulator side, there are some confusion like how do we, where do we account it for as far as RPO is concerned. There are two special tenders we had done. One is a round the clock, one is a peak power. Peak power. Round the clock is almost close to getting subscribed. The original discoms who had requested for them, unfortunately, because of the change in policy, not change, the policy of privatizing discoms, they came into that trap. So they could not take this, the UTs. Then we had marketed to states, more or less RTC will be sold out. Then the peak power, about 50% has been sold out. Peak power, still there are some lack of understanding or appreciation of the fact that stored power will be expensive. So that's one drawback we are seeing, and we are trying to see how in the future tenders we will correct it.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Swain, I was going to ask you about transmission issues. You also had mentioned them earlier. What is the status now? How much has it been resolved, not been resolved? If you can let us know.
The major, there are the older issues in transmission, that the mismatch between the transmission timelines and the generation timelines. Then if there is a mismatch, that who will pay the penalty? Whether generators will be penalized for coming late, or the transmitters will be penalized for that has been resolved by a Power Ministry directive to CRC. So those issues are over. That of course, small issues of interpretation of rules and the company shareholding. There are small issues, minor issues which we are trying to sorting out with the CTU and the Power Grid. And in case it is required, we take the help of CEA and CRC. Currently, the major issue in transmission, especially in as the most of the projects are coming up in Western Rajasthan, is the Great Indian Bustard issue, the recent judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court of the Great Indian Bustard. So trying to resolve it. So that will, if that is allowed, then I don't know, the cost will significantly go. There will be some problems, major problems, because the order has very clearly said it should be underground. the existing lines should go underground in a time frame, and the new lines have to come underground. And we are looking at various options, including cheaper options of making it more bird friendly, the transmission lines, because underground lines have their own challenges over such long distances and right of way and so many issues. So the ministry is seized of this matter, and we hope that this problem is sorted out soon, because that is a big. Many of the project developers they have almost stopped midway. Saying, we need a clarity, like what do we do? Like if we put underground cables, 33 kV, then do we get a change in law? Because this I have not envisaged. So those are the issues we have to sort out. And Power Grid also, most of the lines are built, the new lines, how do they go? Such huge voltages, 440 kV, 765 kV, how do the underground cables perform? Some lack of clarity. So we are trying to sort it out.
Okay. Before we take questions from the audience, I'm going to ask Pallavi. Pallavi, do you have any questions for or suggestions for Mr. Swain?
Thanks, Mr. Arora. I think one question, sir, you mentioned, and first of all, thank you for, I think it's been great listening to you and hearing of the developments. The question with you mentioned about the wind power being developed. Is there any discussion currently ongoing with respect to offshore wind development? Perhaps I think going from the aim that probably might help with the targets that we are looking forward with respect to the development.
Offshore wind, yes, there have been discussions. I think ministry should. They are working on it. The only thing is we are a very price conscious country. So how do we sell offshore wind? As per the present calculation by all the experts, will come around 7 rupees unit. Yeah. So the big issue is that 3 rupiah per unit has to be given as either as a ABI generation based incentive or as a BGF. The country has to take a call, like whether for 1,000 megawatts of offshore wind we spend 3,000 crores or 3,000 crores can be spent in a better manner when the onshore wind is coming below 3. Till that potential exhausted. This is a big call. It's a discussion. So there have been talking like how do we make the cost come down? What facilitation we can do, like so whether the studies have to be done by the government or whether the clearances should be made faster. How do we do that? Those are the issues that are being debated. How do we make it competitive? Because in UK it is about 3 rupees 50 paisa or 4 rupees. That's fine. That kind of level is there. They say our ecosystem is developed. We say okay, like if we can give a 5,000 megawatt or 6,000 megawatt target in about 7 years. So that is a good enough target to create an ecosystem. It's not 1,000 megawatt. Okay, 1,000 megawatt of all this ecosystem cost will be loaded into the tariff. So it is in that stage actually. It's that stage.
Okay, initial stages. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Will you ask the audience questions? Yeah.
Yes, I can see a lot of questions in the chat box. Mr. Swain, the first, I'll quickly just read them out to you. The first question is by Sunil Kumar Kharod. He's asking if it's high time to focus on the energy storage to meet the demand during peak hours, as the share of renewable is increasing and thermal power plants remain in reverse shutdown, and also having limitations of ramping up and down. What are your views on that?
Yes, we are focusing on energy storage, but currently what is happening is most of the states are power surplus and there is spare thermal power available. So right now, you can see like in the peak hours, what is the cost of power? It has not in matching what we can get through the stored power. So another 2 years, yes, thermal can show the way. Can become kind of a balancing power, but yeah, beyond 2 to 3 years, the energy storage has to come. I agree with the fact that developing all these things will take 2 years. So yes, we should start. I think there is a lot of discussion, as I told earlier, is the National Economic Policy as well as the RTO policy. All these issues will be cleared and there will be very clarity on how to go forward. We are also working out how to make pumped storage this by government intervention, like whether any tax incentive or regulatory easing, whether we can make it cheaper without any significant burden on the VGF or the government direct finances. That's what we are looking at. Because this pump storage or this energy storage, also there is no market, so there is no GST revenue from there. So even if we reduce GST, that will be only additional earning. So these are the options that are being closed. Yes, we are working on it.
Okay. There's this gentleman is asking this question again. Is SECI providing any subsidy for solar plant set up by PSUs?
PSUs. See, originally there was a CPSU scheme when subsidy was given. This was 2015, 2016, 2017 scheme. Then currently there is one CPSU scheme which is basically says that the CPSU will set up the plant with domestic modules and there will be some VGF will be given the ministry. But that's being implemented by IREDA. Originally we had done with there are two tranches, about 2000 megawatt we had done through SECI. But this CPSU scheme, we thought we might also join the queue and set up some plants. So we said, let somebody else tender. We being the tender, we cannot also become the bidders, right? So that's
okay. All. So IREDA is basically offering this. Do they have any target? Like, do they have any capacity limitation to that?
I think this current tender is 2,500 megawatt. Or 5,000, but I don't remember. IREDA people will know.
Yeah, I guess we have a representative from IREDA during the day, so we can ask this question.
They will tell about that.
Okay.
So
I have
there is no individual capacity.
Yeah. I only have one question for Mr. Swain. Mr. Swain, any plans for increasing the capital base for SECI?
The government has given this time in the budget they have announced 1,000 crores for SECI. So we have asked this for two options basically. One is since we are doing a large amount of PPA, our turnover will go up to about 12 to 15,000 crores in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So you need a good capital base to cover the payment risk we are taking. So this is one. And with that, once you get a equity, you can't keep it idle. So you have to put in productive assets. So we'll put up some plants, especially in the innovative areas. We have already doing two projects. One is in Chhattisgarh, it's a solar plus storage. Another is in Leh, again a solar plus storage. So yes, capital base government has given this year they have given 1,000 crores and they have said that in case it is required, they may enhance it.
Okay, Dolly.
Okay. Mr. Swain, next question for you. It's a longish one. The International Energy Agency in its report has suggested that investors should not fund new oil, gas and coal supply projects if the world wants to reach to the net zero target by 2050. Do you foresee a shift in the profile of PSUs engaged in the conventional sources of energy today? And would the increased involvement of PSUs in the renewable energy sector expose the private players to certain challenges?
No, see, you can see that NTPC is a very aggressive player in renewable energy now. Not only NTPC, the hydro players like SJVN and TSTC and NHPC are also very, very aggressive. They understand that and their entire portfolio they have built over years is going to disappear in about 10 years if they don't get into renewables. So the power sector PSUs are big time into renewables. I am seeing some of the oil sector people also not exactly into solar and wind, but they are trying to foray into hydrogen and similar kind of a thing, bioethanol hydrogen. I see some movement there. So we are trying to build up an alliance with them that will provide solar power because we are the largest aggregator of solar power and they can use it for doing the hydrogen for their own use because they consume a lot of hydrogen, green hydrogen, I mean to say. So I see many of the PSUs are doing a subtle shift towards renewable energy.
There's another question by Mr. Priyadarshini KS. She's asking, in case the recent SE order on transmission systems in Rajasthan were to be implemented, what is the estimated cost impact and who would need to bear that cost? Are there any legal appeals against the order in the works by MNRE or SECI?
So whether it will be appealed or review petition is filed, I am not the authority to say, and we cannot say till it is filed. So that that we can't discuss. Yet it's being discussed.
Sure.
If ultimately it has to be complied, then it will probably. I feel that it will be a change in law and it will be passed on to the consumers. That is how.
Okay. The next question is, SECI has recently bid out floating solar projects in Uttar Pradesh. What is the outlook on this subsector in the next few years in your perspective?
Floating solar, we have bid out. NTPC has also set up in the Ramagundam, about 100 megawatt. So my outlook is, since I have come to fisheries, this is a different outlook. Many of the reservoirs are going to be used for catch fisheries. They are very ambitious targets. So we have to see like whether there is a conflict, because most reservoirs have been leased out to the fishermen, at least fishermen cooperatives. So there has to be a lot of course, only 10% of area will be taken by the floating solar. And even cage fisheries done in an intensive manner, that will take another 5 to 10% of the reservoir area. There's absolutely no conflict as such. The conflict may come where they use unethical fishing practices. Like some places they use explosives to stun the fish so that they can catch the fish easily. And if that is being done in a particular reservoir and we put floating solar, there are going to be a lot of issues. So otherwise, the outlook is good in floating solar. Technology is also maturing. The cost is also coming quite competitive. That is what we see. I think they are saying, when we are seeing the land-based solar price at about 250 to 260, floating solar was costing about 290 below, to come below 3 rupees. So in the land-starved states, this can be a good option. So, but we have not really no plans to do any tenders. Of course, at individual request, we are doing some PMC work for Vakranangal, Vakra board, then Karnataka, Tungabhadra, Singarani collieries for their ponds. So small, nobody is doing in a big scale so far.
Okay. A little, different from solar. I can see two questions on green hydrogen. I know we have 2 minutes with you. Just one question from me and then from Alok. Is green hydrogen likely to gain momentum in India? And do you see the policy formulation happening in this space? If yes, what are the timelines that you see?
I cannot commit on the timeline straight away, but yes, green hydrogen, among the various applications, the first application that is being envisaged is into the fertilizer sector. And that too, the complex fertilizers where the ammonia is imported. So this will solve two objectives it will fulfill. One is Atmanirbhar Bharat, and the other one is greening the planet, or greening the country. Then for the significant use of ammonia is in urea plants, which are basically integrated. They take natural gas and then they separate out hydrogen and carbon dioxide. They make ammonia. Again, they combine that separated carbon dioxide into ammonia and make urea. So there, green hydrogen through electrolysis method is the outside injection. There are some technical issues that the fertilizer industry is trying to sort out. So the first point of injection will be injection of green hydrogen. First point of production of green hydrogen will be in the fertilizer sector. That's what it looks like. The second one is in the refineries. I think the oil sector finally said that yes, they are going to use a lot of green hydrogen because they use a lot of hydrogen for refining the petroleum product. So that's a major consumer. And in a small way, we can see hydrogen coming into hydrogen or ammonia coming into green ammonia coming into power production, especially for the storage part of it, longer storage. So peaker plants kind of a thing. That's going to come, but that will take about 5-6 years because till now the electrolyzer costs are fairly high. They expect, IEA expect that it will come down by 50 to 60%. So once that comes out, it will compete with other technologies.
Great. Alok, last question from you.
I'll actually just defer to a question from the audience, probably more
sure.
important, from Vivek Saha. Does SECI plan to do something jointly with International Solar Alliance? The government is supporting International Solar Alliance, of course. So I think that's the answer, right?
Government is supporting Solar Alliance. So whenever International Solar Alliance calls us to do something, we'll definitely do. Otherwise, International Solar Alliance is not actually an executive body; it is an advisory body. It is coordinates the different national governments, and the individual companies have to work under that framework of agreement. Wherever they ask us to do something, we'll do. Otherwise, currently we have our hands full in the country, so it is difficult to work abroad. Maybe a small projects, specific projects we can take up. Otherwise, we don't see much traction in next 1 to 2 years.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Swain. Appreciate your time. I know you have a very busy day, and of course, good luck on the Secretary Fisheries position. It's been in news, as you know, a few months ago. It was quite a bit in the news, and with various high-profile people talking about it. And so, good luck, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Swain.